Jambalaya, the South Louisiana dish that has made waves around the world.
Jambalaya.
But while it's synonymous with Louisiana, jambalaya is actually a literal melting pot of Spanish, French, African, Native American, and Caribbean cooking styles. It's history in a bowl. Let's take a look at it, and I'll show you my favorite way to make this classic. So before we get started, first things first. Jambalaya can be categorized in two ways, Cajun and Creole style. The difference being that the Creoles use tomatoes to make a red jambalaya, while the Cajuns just leave them out. So Cajun jambalaya typically only uses meat, like pork and sausage, stuff like that, while Creole can use seafood. This isn't quite as steadfast a rule as it would be for something like gumbo. This is more of a throw in whatever you have kind of dish. Jambalaya is a dish made to stretch ingredients in one pot. You're trying to build up as much flavor as possible to liven up the cheap and filling rice. I grew up eating red jambalaya, so this one will have tomatoes in it. But it'll take a page from the Cajun book as well by just using meat like sausage and pork. So the last thing to remember before you cook this is that it's one pot cooking. The whole point of this dish is to build your layers of flavor into everything that goes into it so it all turns out great. I've seen so many people cook their chicken off to the side or cook their vegetables and add it in later and do that. That completely tramples on the spirit of the dish. You fucks, don't do it. So let's cook this bitch. Jambalaya starts with a fat to cook everything in. A rule I like to use is to use the fat of something that's gonna be in the dish anyway. So since there's going to be pork sausage, you can use pork or bacon fat. If you have chicken, chicken fat, duck, etc. This isn't a make or break thing. Regular canola oil will be fine, but it plays onto the flavor building we're trying to achieve. With that in mind, let's go ahead and sear off some chicken thighs and the pork fat we just melted to keep adding to those layers of flavor. Give them a really, really hard sear, but don't cook them through. They're gonna end up cooking with the rest of the dish. Set them aside when you're done. Next, we're just gonna add the onions. Now, typically in a jambalaya, you use the trinity, which is 2 parts onions to 1 part celery and bell pepper. In this recipe, we're gonna use 4 parts onions because right now we're just gonna use half of those to caramelize and slowly get color. This will give a very deep, sweet note to the jambalaya that adds depth. I like to get them a nice regular caramel color, but another way is to let them go very dark. This is something I learned from Melissa Martin in her cookbook Mosquito Supper Club. Either way works, but do not skip this step. Once caramelized, it's time to add in the trinity and bay leaves, including the rest of the onions. I love the contrast between the sweet, soft onions that just cooked and the more robust ones that will cook with the rest of the trinity. You can also go ahead and add the garlic. Since there's so much veg being cooked, you won't have to worry about it getting burned. After about 15 minutes, add in your spices. Cook for a few minutes to bloom. Taste this as you go and salt it heavily. Remember, all this is going to be absorbed by the starchy rice, so you want a heavily seasoned broth so it's not bland. Next, add the tomato. Cook the tomato down until it's almost jammy. This is a Spanish trick that is used in paella. Once it's cooked down, give it a taste and salt if needed. Then add the rice. We're going to toast the dry rice with everything just to give it one more layer of flavor. Finally, add the stock. Give it a good stir and taste for seasoning. This is what's going to be absorbed, so make sure it's nice and seasoned. Add the chicken and the sausage, bring to a simmer, and cover. Set a timer for 30 minutes and let it sit. Don't lift the lid. This is the hardest part, but you have to trust the process. After the 30 minutes, cut the heat and set a timer for 20 minutes and let it sit. This will even out all the rice and let it continue to cook so it's all perfect. After the 30 minutes of cooking and the 20 minutes of sitting, uncover the pot and stir the jambalaya. Fold in parsley and green onion and hot sauce. I like to add a little of both for color and then also serve it on the side. So that's it. Once you understand jambalaya and get the spirit of the dish, you can start experimenting with different techniques and proteins to make it your own. Jambalaya is a lot like chili. Once you understand it and know where you're going, there's a lot of different ways to get there. Well, did you like what you saw? Well, I can't tell until you hit that like and subscribe button to like Dead Breakfast. Did I fuck up jambalaya? Did I ruin your day? Go ahead and hit the dislike button. Wait, I like that.